A mother. Elena Castillo decided to take a break from her sewing job to bring her children to El Rollo water park, where her 4 identical twin daughters could celebrate their birthday. As she watched her adorable 4 girls laughing by the giant mascots, a feeling of unease crept into her heart. An unusual tear on the yellow duck's wing, a fake nail about to fall off the panda bear. A mother's intuition, which had helped her through so many difficulties in life, subtly tapped a warning beat. Something dirty was quietly clinging to her beloved children. The August sun in Cuernavaca poured like honey bathing El Rollo water park in gold. This place, with its clear blue pools and colorful play areas, was always every child's dream destination, an earthly paradise where innocent dreams could soar. Elena Castillo, a 35-year-old seamstress, her hands still smelling of fabric and thread, was enjoying a rare moment of peace. Elena was a diligent, devoted woman whose life revolved around her 4 most precious gems, Camila, Sofia, Isabel, and Valentina. Her 8-year-old, identical twin daughters, with their fluffy brown curly hair and sparkling mischievous big eyes, were always Elena's pride and endless source of energy. They were like 4 mirrors reflecting each other, identical from face to gestures, sometimes making it difficult for outsiders to distinguish them. But for Elena, each had her own unique and lovable personality. Currently, they were playing by the edge of the pool, their giggles like wind chimes, echoing in the air, further relaxing Elena's heart. Suddenly, Valentina, the most mischievous and energetic of the 4 sisters, her big eyes sparkling with excitement, cried out, "Mommy, it's Quackers the duck and Panda the bear." She pointed towards a small crowd gathered around the park's 2 famous mascots, symbols of friendliness and joy. Elena smiled, pulling out her old Polaroid camera from her bag. This camera was a gift from her husband before he passed away, preserving countless precious family moments. "All right, Mom will take a picture of you with the mascots," she said, her voice full of love. The 4 girls darted like arrows, pushing through the small crowd, squeezing in between the 2 giant mascots. Camilla, the calmest and most timid, snuggled close to the yellow duck. Sophia, the cheerful and energetic one, wrapped her arms around the panda bear's leg, her face radiant. Isabel and Valentina cheered, vying for the front position, wanting to stand closest to the mascots. Elena raised her camera, adjusting the frame for a perfect shot. Her eyes suddenly stopped at a small detail on the yellow duck's wing, a jagged tear, looking as if something sharp had scraped it, not neat at all, but quite unusual. Then she looked at the panda bear and noticed a white fake nail loosely about to fall off its gloved hand, almost completely detached. How strange, Elena thought briefly. These mascots are usually so well maintained, there should never be such small flaws. She didn't pay much attention, focusing on the frame, trying to capture her daughter's smiles. Click, the flash lit up the scene. A radiant smile from the 4 children, along with the image of the 2 giant mascots, was permanently recorded on the Polaroid film. Elena lowered her camera, a satisfied smile on her face, intending to call her daughters back for ice cream, which she had promised them. But in the blink of an eye, as Elena lowered her hand, the crowd around the mascots suddenly moved, forming a chaotic wave of people pushing and shoving. Laughter splashes from nearby games, lively music, all blended into a crazy symphony, deafening Elena's ears. She blinked repeatedly, raising a hand to shield her eyes from the sun, trying to regain her bearings. Her mind suddenly went blank. "Girls, Camila, Sofia, Isabel, Valentina." Her voice suddenly rose a tone, starting to mix with panic, a cold feeling creeping from her spine to her brain. No reply. Not a giggle, not a cheer, not a familiar silhouette. She frantically scanned the area. Where her 4 daughters had just stood next to the 2 mascots, there was now an empty space. The yellow duck and the panda bear had also vanished into the crowd, as if they had never existed, as if they were illusions in a dream. Elena's heart began to pound frighteningly each beat, like a drum urging her on in her chest, rapid and painful. Her breathing became shallow and rapid, suffocating her chest. "Where are you, my darlings, my children?" Her voice trembled, cracking, mixed with choked sobs. She rushed into the crowd, gently pushing through the joyful people, trying not to draw attention. But internally, she was screaming. Has anyone seen 4 identical twin girls who just took a picture with the mascots? 4 identical girls, brown curly hair, 8 years old. Please help me. She asked repeatedly, her eyes scanning every face, every small group, every line of people waiting for rides. But she only received indifferent head shakes, confused and emotionless stares. The entire park seemed to transform into a labyrinth of noise and indifference, each face a cold wall. Cold sweat poured down Elena's forehead, streaming down her temples, mixing with the hot tears that began to fall. This water paradise, where she thought it was the safest and most joyful in just a few short seconds, had turned into an earthly hell. She screamed her daughter's names again, a heart-wrenching sob bursting from her throat, painful to the extreme. The cheerful scene around her became distorted, mocking her despair. A chilling thought suddenly flashed through Elena's mind, making her freeze in the middle of the crowd. If those mascots weren't real mascots, if they were just fakes, then where had her children gone? And who had they gone with? Elena stared at the Polaroid photo still in her hand, at the image of her adorable 4 daughters, now a haunting piece of evidence of a fateful moment. The initial search unfolded in chaos and despair. Police sirens echoed throughout El Rollo, tearing through the previous joyous atmosphere with a piercing, chilling sound. The shouts of park staff announcements from loudspeakers all combined to create a chaotic scene, a stark contrast to the cheerfulness just minutes before. Captain Ramon Sanchez, a middle-aged man with a stern face, graying mustache, and extensive experience in his profession, directed the search team. He moved quickly through the crowd, ordering his subordinates to comb every corner of the park, every pool, every play area. Accompanying him was Detective Alejandro Ramirez, a younger man in his early 30s with sharp eyes and an unusually calm demeanor, always maintaining his composure, even in the most urgent situations. He did not participate in the direct search, but meticulously observed every detail, as if connecting invisible threads in the air, trying to find a pattern, an anomaly in the unfolding chaos. He believed everything left a trace. Elena, her eyes swollen and red-rimmed, her voice hoarse from screaming, recounted her story dozens of times, each telling tearing her heart, every word steeped in despair. "Just a few seconds, Detective. I just turned my back to adjust the camera, and they vanished, as if they dissolved into thin air, along with the duck and the bear." She sobbed her choked cries, interrupting her words, her trembling hands clutching Detective Ramirez's arm as if he were her only lifeline in this violent storm. Ramirez nodded, his eyes full of sympathy, but maintaining focus. He recorded her every word, not missing a single detail, no matter how small. "Miss Castillo, are you sure it was Quackers, the yellow duck, and Panda the bear, the park's official mascots?" He emphasized official, wanting to confirm that what she saw were indeed the mascots provided by the park. "Yes, I remember clearly, very clearly," Elena insisted emphatically. Tears still flowed, but her voice was full of determination. There was a jagged tear on the duck's wing, not a normal tear, but a very sharp scratch, and a white fake nail that had come loose almost completely off the bear's hand. Ramirez frowned, noting this detail carefully. "All right, Ms. Castillo. We will check the mascot records. But currently, according to park management reports, all official mascots have been accounted for and none of them were in that area at the time you mentioned. The real mascot performers were in another area of the park preparing for the afternoon show far from your location and your children's. His voice deepened, signaling a terrifying possibility. Elena, meanwhile, was like a ghost, confused and disoriented, unable to believe what had just happened. The silence of night descended upon El Rollo, bringing with it a chilling, heavy feeling unlike its daytime vibrancy. Police floodlights swept through every corner, every dark area, but all was in vain. No significant traces were found, no specific witnesses other than vague accounts, and most painfully, not a single cry from the four girls was heard. The four girls seemed to dissolve into thin air, leaving only a terrible void in Elena's heart and an unsolved mystery. The air was heavy with despair. The next day, Ramirez began to delve deeper into the small details Elena had provided. He knew that seemingly insignificant information could sometimes be the key to unlocking the truth. He requested maintenance records for all mascot costumes, whether used or not. Scrolling through old yellowed pages, the smell of dust and decaying paper wafted up a scrawled handwritten note. As if the writer wanted it overlooked, made him stop. Quackers and panda costumes with serious defects transferred to Special Repair Department. Special Repair Department. Ramirez mumbled to himself, his eyes suspicious. A feeling of unease arose within him. He immediately looked up the park's organizational structure, flipping through every diagram, every employee list. No such department existed in the official organizational chart. A major anomaly. He immediately went to the park's maintenance area. He asked a longtime employee about the Special Repair Department and received a puzzled look, tinged with a little fear. "There's no such department, detective. Maybe they send stuff out for repair. Here it's just a few of us fixing small things, nothing special. Some old stuff just gets thrown away even." But Ramirez was not easily convinced. He trusted his intuition. He checked every room, every hidden corner, every storage room filled with old junk. Finally, he found an old rusty iron door, locked with an equally rusty padlock, hidden behind piles of broken machinery and dusty tarps. The strong smell of chemicals from inside was so overwhelming that he had to cough violently, a feeling of discomfort and strong unease rising within him, like a warning of something terrible hidden inside. He didn't hesitate. With great force, he used a crowbar to break the lock. The screech of metal was deafening. The door burst open, revealing a small, dark, damp, and dusty room, with hardly any natural light filtering in from the hallway. His flashlight beam swept across the floor where large chemical stains, blotchy like dried blood, had seeped into the concrete, impossible to erase. And then he saw a piece of yellow, tattered fabric draped over an old discarded table covered in spider webs. He picked it up, his heart pounding. It was part of the yellow duck costume with a large tear, exactly as Elena had described, sharp and clear, unmistakable. Nearby, a piece of white fabric with a panda bear paw print with a fake nail that had come off lay scattered on the dirty floor. This was no coincidence. At the same time as Ramirez stood in that gloomy room, Elena's phone rang, the piercing ring tearing through the silence and loneliness of her empty house. A strange woman's voice, full of empathy, but also tinged with fatigue and despair, echoed from the other end of the line. "Is this Ms. Castillo? I also lost my daughter last year. At a different park, but it also involved a faulty mascot. Don't trust the police. They'll hide everything. You have to find justice for your daughter yourself." A long beep beep followed, leaving Elena with a cold feeling and a fragile glimmer of hope. Detective Ramirez immediately reported his findings to Captain Sanchez. Sanchez's face hardened as he looked at the torn fabric and the fake nail. Despite his lingering skepticism and pressure from park management, he was forced to admit that these clues could not be ignored. They matched too perfectly. The official investigation shifted from missing children to suspected kidnapping, a terrifying truth no one wanted to face. Immediately, Ramirez requested a review of all old El Rollo personnel files, searching for any unusual signs. Two names quickly emerged like dark spots in the park's past. The first was Manuel Garcia, a 40-year-old maintenance technician. Records showed he was fired in 1967 and for inappropriate behavior with children, obsessed and stalking causing parental anxiety. Garcia was a tall, quiet man with dull, unpredictable eyes. His position as a technician gave him access to all restricted areas of the park, the maintenance area storage rooms, and even the old underground drainage system. After being fired, Garcia disappeared from public view like a ghost. The second was Joaquin Perez, a 55-year-old cleaner. Perez had a disheveled appearance, hollow eyes, always keeping his distance from everyone, as if separated by an invisible wall. Medical records showed he had been diagnosed with severe mental disorder, with strange and profound obsessions about purity and cleansing. Perez believed the world was full of filth and tainted souls that needed to be washed away to achieve absolute purity. He often spent hours alone in secluded, quiet areas of the park, after closing whispering strange, incomprehensible incantations. Both could be perpetrators, Ramirez stated, pointing to their photos. Garcia has a history of obsession with children, and Perez, with serious psychological issues and sick ideas about cleansing, could be the insane mastermind behind this. The use of mascots to unexpectedly approach children is a very high possibility, especially since they could access and create fake costumes from the maintenance area. Ramirez felt a shiver. Meanwhile, Elena's horror grew ceaselessly every passing moment and torment. She lived in a semi-conscious state, haunted by images of her children. Late one evening, as she sat alone in her empty house, utterly lonely, the phone rang again, the piercing ring like a knife tearing through the silence. She picked up, her heart pounding, a fragile glimmer of hope rising. "Is this Miss Castillo?" A hoarse voice distorted through the phone, cold as ice, whispered. "Your girls will never be found. It's best to forget about them. Otherwise, you'll regret it. Very, very much." The line went dead. The long beep-beep that followed made the atmosphere even more suffocating. Elena trembled, the phone falling from her hand, the dry thud echoing in the dark room like a thunderclap. That voice, full of threats and haunting, was a cruel confirmation that her children were gone, and she was being watched, threatened into silence. Her world was slowly collapsing, and she was fighting alone against an invisible ghost. Despite the initial clues from the secret room and the anonymous call, Detective Ramirez's investigation quickly hit an invisible wall. Searches for Manuel Garcia and Joaquin Perez yielded no results. Both had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace. No new witnesses emerged, despite police appeals rewards and continuous announcements on news outlets. Most importantly, there was no physical evidence strong enough to definitively convict the two suspects or anyone else in court. No bodies, no blood, nothing that could determine the tragic fate of the four girls. The case reached a dead end, a terrifying silence engulfing all hope. El Rollo Park, once a symbol of joy and laughter, was now shrouded in the shadow of the case, an indelible stain. Bad news spread quickly, not only in Cuernavaca, but nationwide, severely impacting the park's reputation and business. Visitor numbers plummeted. Alarmingly, revenue dropped drastically, pushing the park to the brink of bankruptcy. Pressure from park management on the police grew, demanding the case be closed as soon as possible to avoid a larger scandal that would completely destroy their reputation. They needed a conclusion, an explanation, even a false one, to quell the fire of doubt and fear in the public's heart. In late 1969, nearly a year and a half after the tragic disappearance, after hundreds of hours of fruitless investigation and thousands of desperate phone calls from Elena, an official announcement was made to the public. Captain Ramon Sanchez, with a tired face, heavy eyes, and a reluctant, almost inaudible voice, stood before a forest of cameras and microphones declaring, "Due to a lack of significant physical evidence and no bodies found, the case of the 4 Castillo sisters is officially suspended. The incident will be classified as missing children not yet found." He added that all search efforts would still be maintained, but no further large-scale investigations would be conducted. It was a euphemism for a frozen case. For Elena, it was not just an administrative decision, but a death sentence, a sharp knife tearing at her heart. Her world completely collapsed. The police in whom she had placed all her trust had given up. Justice had turned its back on her. The pain of losing her children mingled with a feeling of helplessness, betrayal, and abandonment. She cried, she pleaded, she clung to anyone who would listen to her, to the last threads of hope, but all was in vain. The door to the investigation closed coldly, definitively, leaving her to drown in the abyss of bottomless despair. "No, it can't be. My children are not just missing. They were kidnapped. They were murdered." Elena screamed in despair as reporters surrounded her cameras, flashing continuously at her anguished face, as if to capture every tear. She tried to break free from their encirclement, wanting to run far away from this place where justice had been distorted. But her words were just echoes in an empty space. No one really wanted to listen, or no one dared to believe what she said. Her eyes were red, swollen, crisscrossed with tiny blood vessels, but there were no more tears left to fall. People gradually forgot about the case. Life continued to move on. New news, new events quickly filled the void. El Rollo tried to recover, but the scar remained indelible like a curse. As for Elena, even though her life was stripped of meaning, even though the pain cut her like a knife every night, she still kept a small spark alive in her heart, faith in the truth. A rock-solid belief that her children deserved justice. No matter how long it took, she would never stop searching. Elena disappeared from public view after the case was suspended, but she never stopped searching in her own way. She personally investigated, calling other families with missing children, looking for similarities, even the smallest details. She became a detective without a badge, a mother whose only weapon was love. She believed that somehow the truth would be revealed. One day, darkness would have to give way to light. She waited. 5 years passed quickly like a terrible dream, but also as long as a millennium for Elena Castillo. Meanwhile, El Rollo, in an attempt to escape the ghost of its past, was undertaking a major project to upgrade its old drainage system, hoping to shed its stain and attract visitors back. In April 1973, the loud roar of machinery echoed throughout the park. Excavators, digging into forgotten layers of earth as if stirring a deep sleep. One fateful morning, a group of workers were toiling near the old maintenance area, where Detective Ramirez had once broken into the secret room. The excavator's bucket continuously scraped deep into the ground, and suddenly it hit something unusually hard. It wasn't rock, nor was it an old pipe. It was a strangely constructed concrete structure, solidly reinforced, not matching any of the park's architectural blueprints, lying deep underground like a hidden tumor. News of the unusual structure quickly reached Detective Alejandro Ramirez. Although the case had been suspended long ago, he had never truly given up on the Castillo case. The image of the distraught Elena Castillo, his silent promise to his own conscience, always haunted him. A strong intuition, an inexplicable urge prompted him to be at the scene immediately. He arrived, his sharp eyes scanning the concrete block, his gaze stopping at its location. It was near the old auxiliary chemical storage tank once used to treat industrial wastewater before being closed and forgotten years ago. A terrifying coincidence. Dig deeper. Ramirez ordered the workers, his voice calm but resolute, as if he knew what awaited beneath that cold concrete layer. Dig around this structure carefully, bit by bit. Don't destroy anything around it. The workers toiled, the dry sounds of shovels and hammers echoing each strike like a rapid drum beat in the quiet morning air. Layers of earth and rock were gradually removed, revealing the full extent of the concrete block. It was not part of the drainage system. It was a secret bunker meticulously constructed and perfectly concealed underground, like a tailor-made tomb waiting to be discovered. When they broke through the final layer of concrete, a foul, damp air rushed out, carrying the strong smell of chemicals, decaying earth, and putrid death, forcing everyone present to recoil in disgust, trying to hold their breath. Ramirez was the first to step inside without hesitation. His flashlight beams swept through the dark, damp space devoid of any natural light. The sight that met his eyes sent shivers down his spine. The bunker was small, damp, with gray concrete walls. On rotten wooden shelves, he saw children's personal belongings, a blue butterfly hair clip, a small faded pink bracelet, a yellowed comic book, small toys scattered on the cold floor. And then, on a wall covered with whitewash, there were rows of Polaroid photos. Each one was a picture of a different child, with eyes filled with ultimate fear, faces pale with panic, like soulless dolls captured in their final moments. In the corner of the bunker, on an old decaying table, a black leather-bound notebook lay open, its pages yellowed. Ramirez picked it up, every handwritten word scrawled but haunting, filled with the madness of a diseased mind. It was the diary of Joaquin Perez, recording his ramblings about purity, soul cleansing, and his sick rituals. The notebook not only proved his insane motive, but also revealed the method he used to commit these heinous crimes, how he approached and how he cleansed the victims. But the most terrifying thing was still below, in the deep darkness of the bunker. Inside the old chemical storage tank, partially dried but still containing corrosive, foul-smelling liquid, a large stainless steel barrel meticulously sealed lay still like a cold tomb waiting to be opened. It was the final point of the search journey. Ramirez took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He knew this moment would change. Everything would unveil the most horrible truth. Open it. He ordered, his voice calm but full of authority, decisive. With specialized cutting tools, the barrel was slowly pried open. A noxious gas, along with a strong chemical smell, rose, making those around vomit, not daring to look inside. Inside, submerged in the murky chemical liquid, were the bodies of the 4 Castillo girls. They were partially decomposed, but still identifiable by their clothes and size, by small pieces of fabric still clinging to the bodies. Next to them, a damaged piece of yellow mascot fabric with a clear tear on the wing, exactly as Elena had described. A yellow duck head, horribly deformed by corrosive chemicals. And a panda bear leg that had been corroded by chemicals, leaving only a part of the bone. The truth, incredibly disgusting and brutal, had been exposed after 5 years buried in the darkness of oblivion. Screams of horror echoed throughout the bunker, the cries of the workers witnessing the scene. Ramirez stood there, his eyes unblinking, witnessing the ultimate evil, and he knew that finally justice would come. News of the discovery of the bodies of the 4 Castillo sisters spread like wildfire across Cuernavaca, then throughout Mexico. The entire city was shaken, fear and outrage erupting violently. El Rollo was completely sealed off, becoming a gigantic crime scene, strictly guarded. Elena Castillo, upon hearing the news, fainted. The pain was too immense, too cruel, as the truth was revealed in the most horrifying way. But when she woke up, she felt a strange serenity, an unexpected relief. Finally, her children had been found. Finally, she could begin to seek true justice, a justice no longer a distant hope. Forensic teams and investigators flooded the secret bunker and the chemical storage area. Floodlights illuminated every nook and cranny, every shattered piece, every trace meticulously collected, carefully like precious jewels. Detective Alejandro Ramirez personally supervised all activities. He never took his eyes off Joaquin Perez's notebook. The pages were filled with scrawled, haunting writings recording every sick, cleansing ritual. Perez believed this world was full of impurity. The children had been tainted by existence. He believed that they could only be purified through death to free their souls from worldly decay. He even meticulously documented the storage of souls in sacred water, the chemical storage tank, so they would be preserved in eternal purity. Mock fingerprint report on the notebook. Ramirez ordered a technician, his voice cold and stern. Compare immediately with Manuel Garcia and Joaquin Perez. Both have records on file. Meanwhile, autopsy results showed the cause of death was asphyxiation or drowning before being submerged in chemicals. The level of decomposition indicated the time precisely matched the disappearance in 1968. More horrifying was the discovery of traces of many other victims through personal belongings and Polaroid photos in the bunker. The Castillo case was not an isolated incident, but part of a horrific chain of crimes. Detective, a forensic technician, called out, his voice trembling with disgust. "We found something very important in the sludge at the bottom of the tank. It appears to be a small molar fragment and a few strands of hair. Compare DNA immediately with other victims in the photos and the Castillo family records." Ramirez directed, his eyes full of determination. "We need to be sure." In just a few hours, the fingerprint and DNA results were sent back, the words on the report like knives, cutting into the darkness of truth. "Detective, the fingerprints on the notebook match 100% with Joaquin Perez." A technician reported, his voice filled with astonishment. "And more importantly, we found Manuel Garcia's fingerprints on several pages, indicating he handled this notebook, that he participated in this process." "Excellent!" Ramirez almost exclaimed, a flicker of light in his tired eyes. "So we have evidence directly linking Garcia and Perez to this sick plan, a criminal network that was not simple at all. And then the DNA results from the tooth fragment and hair. DNA matches perfectly with one of the 4 Castillo girls, detective. This confirms this is where they were held and murdered, their cold grave. Every piece of the puzzle was perfectly connected. Perez's notebook was evidence of his insane motive and brutal methods. Garcia's fingerprints directly linked him to the conspiracy. The belongings, Polaroid photos, and bodies proved the crimes had occurred and their scale. And the damaged mascot fabric pieces and mascot parts found near the bodies were specific physical evidence of how they mysteriously approached the victims. The case was about to be completely solved. With undeniable evidence in hand, Detective Ramirez issued a nationwide warrant for Manuel Garcia and Joaquin Perez. No longer just suspects, they were now exposed murderers lurking in the shadows, waiting to be revealed. Police forces were mobilized to the maximum, spreading across major cities. Images of Garcia and Perez were continuously broadcast on all news channels, posted at police stations, and plastered on public bulletin boards. Public pressure was immense, everyone demanding justice be served quickly and forcefully, not allowing another second to pass in injustice. Manuel Garcia was arrested first. He was found hiding in a dilapidated, rundown house on the outskirts of the city, living by petty theft to survive gaunt and dirty. When the police stormed in, he resisted weakly, his eyes vacant and empty. At the police station, he initially remained silent, his face expressionless like a wooden statue. "Mr. Garcia," Ramirez said, placing Perez's notebook on the table, pushing it closer to him. He observed every small expression on his face. "We found this, and we know everything. We know what you and Joaquin Perez did. This notebook, it tells all." Garcia looked at the notebook, and then his gaze shifted to meet Ramirez's eyes directly. His eyes were still empty, but a flicker of fear passed through them like a crack in a thick sheet of ice. Ramirez continued to describe in detail what had been found in the bunker children's belongings, haunting Polaroid photos, the strong chemical smell, and the bodies. Word by word, he spoke slowly, clearly, like needles piercing his mind. A slow, unstoppable collapse began in Garcia. He started to tremble with slight tremors. Then he lowered his head, covering his face, distorted by fear and disgust, like someone who had just woken from the most terrifying nightmare. Dry sobs burst from his throat, like the sound of an injured animal, weak and pathetic. "Joaquin," he said, "filthy souls needed to be cleansed." He repeated like a broken man, haunted by the words of his insane accomplice. "I just helped him. I didn't want them to live in impurity. This world is too dirty for pure souls to exist." Ramirez pressed his voice, authoritative, unwavering. "Don't want to live in impurity. What did you and Perez do to those children? How did you choose them? Why innocent children?" Garcia, completely broken, confessed everything. He revealed that he and Joaquin Perez had used faulty mascots to kidnap children. He emphasized that there were no specific criteria or purpose for selecting victims beyond their impulsive whims. "Any child who wandered off or was attracted by our fake mascots, we would take them." Garcia said, his voice trailing off, filled with a terrifying indifference. Garcia, who had maintenance skills and some knowledge of fabrication, created crude mascot replicas. He took advantage of times when real staff were changing shifts or when the area was deserted to easily approach children. He recounted how he lured children with mascots, then quickly took them down to the secret bunker. Joaquin said that those souls were tainted by the outside world, that their innocence was just a facade for underlying decay. He said they needed to be cleansed to return to absolute purity. Garcia whispered, his voice trembling, as if recounting a story he didn't want to remember. He described how Perez would perform cleansing rituals by drowning the victims until they stopped moving, then storing the bodies in the sacred water, the old chemical tank, so their souls would not be further defiled by this world. Garcia admitted he was the one who directly carried out the kidnappings and helped Perez in these disgusting rituals, mesmerized by Perez's madness, believing his ramblings. Even more shocking was Garcia's testimony about a third accomplice who had helped them evade justice for 5 years and the one who had threatened Elena. Raul Ramirez, a former security guard. He helped us cover everything up. And he was the one who called to threaten Ms. Castillo to make her give up the search. Immediately, without a second's delay, An arrest warrant was issued for Raul Ramirez. He, a plump man with a dignified appearance, was completely stunned when police raided his home in the middle of the night. Faced with Garcia's detailed confession and the undeniable evidence from the bunker, Raul Ramirez could not deny another word. He confessed that he had been bribed a large sum of money by Garcia to turn a blind eye, help conceal their actions, and provide information about patrol schedules so they could easily operate in the shadows. He also admitted to calling Elena to threaten her to stop investigating, to let the case sink into oblivion forever. Joaquin Perez, the remaining culprit, was found wandering aimlessly near an old church, muttering cleansing prayers and pure souls in his own delusional stupor. He was arrested without resistance, his eyes completely vacant, immersed in his own sick fantasy world. 3 murderers, 3 ghosts of cruelty had been caught. The hunt had finally ended. In September 1973, the gavel of justice echoed throughout the packed courtroom. The trial of Manuel Garcia, Joaquin Perez, and Raul Ramirez took place in an atmosphere of extreme tension. The entire nation followed every development, every testimony, every piece of evidence, awaiting a fitting verdict for the horrific crimes committed. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on the 3 culprits sitting coldly in the defendants' chairs. Elena Castillo, the mother who had transcended all limits of pain, stepped onto the witness stand. She was the key witness. Her testimony carried immeasurable weight. Facing the 3 individuals who had taken her daughter's lives, her face was pale, but her eyes shone with an extraordinary resolve, an unwavering will. Her voice trembled at first, but gradually became clear and powerful, recounting every horrifying moment of that fateful day, August 12th. She described in detail the despair of not finding her children, the years lived in pain and agonizing waiting, and the entire courtroom fell silent, a deathly stillness enveloping the space. She looked directly at Garcia Perez and Raul Ramirez, her eyes filled with the ultimate suffering of a mother who had lost her children, but also with determination unwavering, as if wanting to burn them. Next was Detective Alejandro Ramirez. He presented in detail the entire investigation process, from the smallest clues overlooked for years to the discovery of the secret bunker and the horrifying bodies. His voice was calm and clear, but every word carried the weight of truth. He presented Joaquin Perez's chilling notebook, reading the sick notes about purity and cleansing rituals. He showed Polaroid photos of other victims, young faces frozen in terror. He revealed the undeniable DNA and fingerprint analysis results, along with Manuel Garcia's detailed confession. Each piece of evidence presented was like a heavy hammer blow against the weak defenses of the perpetrators, horrifying everyone in the courtroom. The prosecutor, a strong woman with a powerful voice and clear indignation, presented a scathing indictment. She emphasized the brutality, sickness, and systematic nature of the crimes. "This is not just a murder, Your Honor," she said, her sharp eyes sweeping across the 3 defendants, "but a meticulously planned series of actions exploiting the innocence of children and the public's trust in an entertainment venue. The defendants not only took lives, but also destroyed the trust of an entire society, instilling ultimate fear in places presumed to be the safest." She demanded the maximum sentence. Joaquin Perez's defense attorney attempted to argue that his client suffered from severe mental illness and was unaware of his actions, merely a victim of delusions and exploitation by Garcia. However, Perez's notebook, though filled with insane ramblings, clearly showed a deliberate and planned scheme. A sick but still existing logic, proving that he was capable of committing the crimes and should be held responsible for his actions. After many days of tense, dramatic trials with breathtaking moments and shocking testimonies, the jury delivered its final verdict. When the presiding judge announced it, the entire courtroom held its breath. The judge's gavel struck dryly like a peal of thunder, shattering the silence, ending the sentence. Manuel Garcia for the kidnapping and murder of multiple children, including the 4 Castillo sisters, is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Joaquin Perez for the kidnapping and murder of multiple children, including the 4 Castillo sisters, is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Raul Ramirez for complicity concealing crimes and threatening witnesses is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Oh. The entire courtroom erupted in sighs of relief applause from Elena's supporters and sobs from the families of other victims. Justice, though bitterly delayed, had finally been fully served. Elena collapsed, covering her face and sobbing, hot tears streaming down her cheeks. But these were not tears of despair, but of liberation, of recognition, and of comfort that her children finally had found peace and justice. She had done it. She had sought justice for her children and for the other innocent souls. The horrific case finally came to an end, but its repercussions echoed long after in the hearts of Cuernavaca and all of Mexico. Manuel Garcia, Joaquin Perez, and Raul Ramirez were sent to maximum security prison where they would spend the rest of their lives paying for their crimes, confined within cold walls, forever unable to harm anyone else. During deeper investigation and interrogation, along with the collection of additional records, pieces of the murderer's past gradually came to light, painting a dark picture of twisted personalities. Joaquin Perez, the insane mastermind with a cleansing obsession, was found to have a tragic childhood. Orphaned at a young age, he grew up in a harsh orphanage subjected to both physical and mental abuse. Cruel guardians often used cold water to cleanse children's sins, instilling in his tender mind a distorted notion of purity and punishment. Another painful event was the death of his only younger sister from an untreated illness, which haunted him with the belief that his sister had died in impurity. From then on, Perez believed that this world was full of filth and tainted souls that needed to be washed away to return to eternal purity. And he, with the power of a sick God, had the duty to carry this out. His notebook was not only a diary of crimes, but also evidence of a completely distorted soul destroyed by deep childhood trauma. Manuel Garcia, the accomplice who directly carried out the kidnappings, was no better off. He was born into a poor, loveless family. From a young age, Garcia showed psychological deviance, shunned by friends, and frequently bullied. He had an abnormal interest in children, but not with love, but with obsession, wanting to control and possess them. He had been fired from many jobs for stalking and harassment. Meeting Perez, someone with insane but systematic ideas, was like a fateful encounter. Garcia found a purpose for his dark desires under the guise of soul cleansing. He exploited the innocence of children and Perez's blindness to satisfy his sick desires, turning harmless games into tools for crime. El Rollo, of the once famous water park, a symbol of joy and entertainment, never recovered. Although the new management tried their best to renovate and change its name, the shadow of the horrific case still lingered. No one wanted to bring their children to a place that had been the grave of innocent souls, a place where trust had been blatantly betrayed. A few years later, El Rollo declared bankruptcy and was permanently closed, turning into a desolate ruin with moss-covered waterslides and dry pools full of fallen leaves, a dark and eternal reminder of the crimes that had occurred. Detective Alejandro Ramirez, with his outstanding performance in the Castillo case and his unwavering persistence, was promoted. A year after the case, he was transferred to a newly established federal unit, specializing in investigating missing and murdered child cases nationwide. Meanwhile, Elena Castillo, after her children were laid to rest, transformed her ultimate pain into extraordinary strength. In September 1974, she established the Garden of Memories on a small plot of land near her home, a peaceful space with lush green trees and small monuments commemorating victims of missing persons cases. Along with that, she founded the Light for Stolen Souls Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to providing legal support, psychological counseling, and resources for families with missing children, while also raising funds to help police in more effective searches and investigations. Elena was no longer the frail 35-year-old seamstress who only knew how to cry and despair. She became a powerful voice, a symbol of resilience, and a fighter for justice. She appeared on television, spoke at national conferences, and lobbied to improve laws and investigation procedures for missing children cases so that no family would have to endure the pain she had. She transformed her pain into a beacon of hope for others, a promise that no one would be forgotten. 25 years after the horrific case time had flowed like an endless river, carrying away countless memories and leaving only indelible traces. In August 1993, the sky over Cuernavaca was still blue, but the landscape had changed so much. Elena Castillo, now an older woman, her hair white as frost-deep crow's feet at the corners of her eyes, bearing witness to years of struggle with pain and dedication. She no longer wore the old dress of a seamstress, but a formal, simple outfit exuding the solemnity and composure of someone who had experienced too many upheavals. On that fateful day, August 12th, she still returned to El Rollo, where the nightmare of her life began. But El Rollo was no longer the bustling, lively water park it once was. It was now just an abandoned piece of land, a ruin swallowed by nature. Trees grew profusely, vines crisscrossing and covering the decaying moss-covered remains of pools and water slides. A rusty iron gate, tightly locked with thick chains, dripped with the tears of time, as if weeping for lost souls and shattered dreams. There was no laughter, no music, only silence and the musty smell of decay. Elena did not go inside. She just stood silently before the decaying gate. The August wind still rustled through, carrying the sound of rustling leaves like whispers from the past, the voices of Camila, Sofia, Isabel, Valentina. Elena watched other children passing by on the nearby road, their innocent laughter bringing back images of her 4 little daughters, beautiful memories that were now piercingly painful, a longing that would never fade. She gently touched her handbag, an unconscious, meaningful gesture. Inside was a yellowed, time-stained Polaroid photo, the image of her 4 identical twin girls smiling brightly next to the yellow duck and the panda bear. It was the last photo she took of her children, a happy moment frozen forever, a testament to their existence and the tragedy that had occurred. The pain never faded. It was like a deep scar in Elena's heart, reminding her of a part of her life that had been torn apart, a part of her soul that could never fully heal. But it was also a reminder of her remaining purpose in life, of the meaning of her loss. Her garden of memories had helped hundreds of families find solace, a place where they could remember their lost children. Her Light Foundation had found dozens of missing children and supported thousands of investigations across the country, bringing hope to the desperate. Detective Ramirez, now a leading expert in the field, a trusted friend and companion, still regularly contacted her, sharing successes and solved cases. She looked out into the distance towards the Green Mountains, where the sunrise was appearing, bringing new rays of light, a new beginning for a day, a generation. "My children," Elena whispered, her voice hoarse in the wind, like a prayer, a promise to her departed children. "I found you. I brought you justice. And I will never stop reminding this world about caution about betrayed trust, and about the truth that no matter how much time passes, no matter how deep the scars, we must never stop seeking justice for stolen souls. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks, but her eyes still shone with determination and an undying hope, a flame that would never extinguish. She was Elena Castillo, a mother who had lost everything but found a reason to live, to turn pain into light. Illuminating the darkest corners of society, to ensure that there would be no more forgotten gates, no one else would have to endure what she had. The story of the 4 Castillo girls would never be forgotten forever, a warning for future generations. If Elena Castillo's story has touched your heart, made you ponder pain and resilience, or awakened you to hidden dangers, please share it with a friend via WhatsApp. Perhaps it's someone looking for comfort in loss or needing a reminder of the importance of vigilance. Or perhaps they just need to know that justice always exists, no matter how many challenges it faces, and that stolen voices will never be forgotten. We cannot bring back the precious souls, but we can tell this story together, so that no one else has to disappear in silence, so that justice is always served. Please share this story. Who knows, somewhere someone might need Elena's beacon of hope at just the right time.